Hello folks, welcome back to the Wikipedia world, and I am Abhinay Gupta. So today let us start with the standards on auditing. This is the most important part of your entire syllabus. Weightage around 40 marks, 40 to 45 marks, including few questions from the accounting standards. Right? So standards on auditing is, although I would say it covers around 45% of your entire subject in your examination, but if you look at the content, even the content is huge, right? And as I discussed already in the first class, that this is one topic you should go slow, and the lecture that we are recording, the lecture we are providing you, will actually help you out with that, will help you out in the best possible way. I'll tell you why. Because when you sit in any class and you understand the subject, the standards on auditing, when you go on with different standards on auditing, in one class for 3 hours you are basically exposed to 2 to 3 auditing standards, right? And then the confusion starts. You are not able to basically memorize the content of each standard specifically. Over here what we will be doing is, we will cover each standard specifically, and if required we will be breaking standards into 2 parts to cover them, right? How will that help? First of all, you will get the entire in-depth analysis of the standard, right? And you will get the content of what you need to learn. I'll tell you in the process what are the topics and what are the points that you need to mug up, because if you're asked in the examination, you will have to write them down as it is, because that is what the institute expects from you. And then you are done with the lecture, you revise it, right? Just soon after the lecture, close your books. Next, when you will be starting the next lecture, before that revise the previous lecture, and then start the lecture. And in the initiation of the next lecture also, we would give a brief recap of the entire standard, so that will be a revision over there, right? And when you are listening it from my mouth again, second time, right, the second time, the summaries, the bullet points, right, you will know the pattern and the flow of the standard, and that will help you to segregate the standard into parts and remember it. It is not only about the content and bombarding you with content. You will understand at one go, you will think, oh, it's going very beautifully, I'm understanding everything. But when you sit down for revision in your examination, or when you pick up the questions from your practice manual, you'll see, you start answering them, you'll see that you are not writing all the points. In fact, the point is that you will be writing some other points. That is where you face the problem, and we will sort that out. So we'll do the standards, revise it. In the initiation of the next class, we'll again briefly revise the standard. We'll give 3-4 minutes to a standard, and then start with the next standard, right? And if needed, if you feel better, that I can see it in the comment box below, right? If you feel, then I can revise 2 standards in each class. We have that time, like we can devote 5 minutes in the beginning to revise 2 standards. That means if I complete one standard, we'll revise it in the next class beginning, and we'll revise it again in the beginning of the 3rd class, right? And the standard we put up in the 2nd class, we'll be revising it in the beginning of the 3rd class and the 4th class. So in the beginning of the 3rd class, you will have the revision of the 1st and the 2nd standard, and then you go on to the 3rd. It sounds interesting, and it will be very helpful for you, I'm sure, and you will find the difference, right? So, okay, starting with standards, telling you what are the different categories of standards and what are the content of the standard. It's okay, we'll go with that. All of you must have people who have already been through auditing, who has read the subject, they have been through it. But did you at any point of time make an effort to flip the study material of the institute and read the initial pages of the standards on auditing, where you have been told about the brief history, the requirement, why and how did the standard of auditing come up? No, sir, those topics are not important for the exam. Yeah, most of the students think like that. Okay, and you have not been asked questions from that topic, I agree with that also. But try and inculcate this kind of habit that when you are studying something, study it in totality, right? That will help you relate to that topic, right? When I tell you about the initiation of the standards on auditing, how it moved ahead, what efforts did the institute make, and finally the standards that you are studying, how did they come up, so many of them, right? You will get a link to it, you will connect to the topic. That is personally what I feel. I don't know about how many of you feel the same, right? But we will start our class in that particular pattern itself. So I will give you a brief introduction, and in the introduction the first thing we'll do is the brief history, right? So auditing practice has been going on in your country for long ago. When you have companies, you started auditing, but there were very minimum chartered accountants, very minimum standards set, right? Everybody used to do the auditing. Actually what they considered is, we are checking the financial statements. So they tried to use their own professional judgment, right, whatever they had learned, and to see whether or not it is being the financial statements are being prepared in a fair way. The content of the financial statement, the presentation is good, right? They all had their different ways of auditing, their different ways of presenting the financial statements and stuff, and this brought a lot of problem. There was no particular standard, there was no standardized pattern of how to prepare financial statements and how to audit them. That is when the accounting standards came up, right? The institute itself, they promoted the accounting standards so that the entire accountancy of the country, right, they should be streamlined, so that it is easier to understand the financial statement of various companies, because you all are talking on the same platform now, right? So similarly, there was a need to bring on standards for auditing as well, right? So these auditing standards that you have, basically these are not the mandate of the Companies Act or the schedule or anything. No law, nobody requires you to follow the standards. Then why do we do the standards? Why is it a compulsion for us to follow the standard? There is no requirement by law, there is no requirement by the Companies Act, because you are going to be chartered accountants, and being a member of the institute, it is a mandate for you to conduct or to provide your attest function in accordance with the standards on auditing. Because if you don't do that, you will succumb yourself to professional misconduct, right? You will read about professional ethics as well, so you'll see that will result into professional misconduct. So if you are chartered accountants, you are going on for auditing, it is a compulsion for you from the institute that you have to follow the standards on auditing while discharging the attest function, right? So if we start them back in 1955, that was the first time when institute felt that some standards have to be bought, the auditing practice has to be standardized, right? But how would the institute do it? The institute, the ICAI, how would it do it? So they did not have a designated body, right? So what the institute thought, that first of all they have to allocate some people to specifically discharge their duties towards providing some standards to the country, right? So the institute set up a research committee, right, who had to analyze the entire situation and bring out a conclusion, bring out a solution for that, right? So this research committee was basically set up to deal with the complexities that the members were facing in the field of auditing. The scenarios were changing, the new accounting standards were being adopted, the foreign practices were being adopted slowly, silently in the country, right? Everybody was going through their own ways, reforms, new amendments, new techniques, right? So the members of the institute, they started facing difficulties as to how do we audit it, how do we report it, right? So the research committee was basically dedicated to solve their problem, right? They had to research what is the problem and how do we solve that problem. So the members of the research committee, they went ahead with the research as to what are the problems that the members are facing, right? They were counseled, they were asked, reports were prepared, and then they worked out to frame standards. And back then, when you did not have cell phones, when you did not have the internet facilities, right, you had to personally interact, you had to personally discuss. So it took a lot of time for them. Today, if you want to do, you just open up a blog and then you start getting comments over there and everything is done. But that time it was a cumbersome task, right? So they took around 9 years. And finally, in the year 1964, they came up with a statement on auditing practice, right? These statements actually were of great help, not only to the members of our institute, but also to other professionals outside the purview of the ICAI, but who were interested in this field. So this was actually a base for them, base for the entire nation, right? It was a base for the auditing practice. So even in the industries, right, people who had the companies, basically all the companies, right, they started adopting these facilities, these practices. That okay, if the auditor is trying to adopt this practice, let us also make the situation easy, right? This was not with the aim for only making the situation easy for the auditors, right, but also they wanted to get into a standard practice for comparison purpose as well, right? So these statements, they were not just based on the research that they were doing in the local Indian region, right? For this, they also brought in some brainstorming from abroad. So they looked out as to what are the practices that are prevalent in the growing economies, or the economies that are working better than our country, the developed economies of those times, right? They went to them. Some people always say that institute has been copying stuff, right? So I won't deny, but you need to understand that the institute is not blindly copying everything what is going on in the West, specifically the UK, right? The basic purpose why we need to adopt those things from the UK specifically is that we are working our culture that is somewhere aligned with the UK concept, right? We basically, if you notice, we do not copy things from the US. Even the Indian accounting standards that have come up, we do not copy them from the US GAAP, we copied it from IFRS. That is the practice that has been followed in UK. And why IFRS? The basic reason is, first of all, okay, it was in UK. Second, in the entire world, that was the most acclaimed, most favored accounting practices, because their concept of the fair value accounting was considered to be the best, and their disclosure requirements were at par with everything. They were beyond everything actually. We think we have a lot of disclosure requirement. IFRS has even more disclosure requirements. That is why, to get to a parallel ground, get on a parallel platform with the entire world, because of the globalization, because we wanted to actually explore and capitalize the economic market of the other countries, we had to do that, so that we are in line with the world, right? Companies who have subsidiaries abroad, they stop facing that problem. If you want to make investments, if you want to go to the other economy, if you want to capitalize the foreign markets, you can do that. That is why we go. And why UK? Basically, you have seen since the beginning we have been following UK. Like in US you have the presidential rule, in in UK you have the prime minister rule, in India also you have the prime minister rule. So basically we have been following a lot of things from UK, right? So even while we were preparing the statement of auditing back then in 1964, they had to take references from abroad, and these were not blindly copied from the West. They were modified as per the requirement of our country. They saw the need, what could suit our country, our economy, and accordingly the 4 statements were formulated. What are they? The statements on qualification in the auditor's report, number 1. Number 2, the statements on Mao Caro. So you must be thinking, what is Mao Caro? These days, you are aware of what Caro is, company's auditor's report order, right? So in those days, back then, they used to call it Mao Caro. What is Mao Caro? manufacturing and other companies auditors report order. Right? So it is CARO with 3 more prefix, that is manufacturing and other. That is it. So it was Mao-Caro, sorry. So they bought out the statements on Mao-Caro. Then they bought out the statements on responsibilities of joint auditors. Right? So first they dealt with the audit report, then the CARO, and then the responsibilities of joint auditors. And finally, the statement on payments to auditors for other services. Because auditors were basically considered to do the auditing work. Right? But as you know, today also we have SRE, SRS, SAE, right? Assurance services, related services, compilation also we do. So basically at those days the compilation was, they considered the compilation to be done only by the accountants. Chartered accountants were not needed for them. Right? So if they used to hire a chartered accountant, right, the chartered accountants faced difficulty with the payment scheme. They were not ready to pay for that. Right? So the statement for on the payment to auditors for other services also was introduced. That apart from auditing, please start recognizing our chartered accountants and other services for other services also, like for assurance, for compilation, for other related services that you need. Right? So these were basically the 4 initial statements that were launched in the country, and people started following it. So the CAs who had qualified back then in 1964 to 1970-75 also, those people have studied only these 4 statements. Right? And we have a lot of statements. Right? So not an issue. So these statements were further revised in 1968 and 1977. But then there came a revolution. So in the year 1977, on an international level, IFAC was set up. Now what is IFAC? IFAC is the International Federation of Accountants. So remember, C does not stand for committee or something, it is AC is accountants, right? So IFAC, International Federation of Accountants, was set up, and our institute, our ICAI, was also a part of this federation. Right? What did they do is they set up an International Auditing Practice Committee, a committee that would look out for the other standards on the international level. Like you have IFRS on the international level. At that point of time, IFAC had set up a committee, that is the International Auditing Practice Committee, like to streamline the audit practice worldwide. What they did is they brought out certain guidelines, right, certain guidance notes, which were later on transformed into the international standards on auditing. That is where the actual revolution in the field of auditing started. So our institute was making effort since 1955. They came up with something substantial, something concrete in 1964, and they went on amending it with the requirements of the industry. And after that, 13 years later, right, they came up on the international level, they came up with a federation who set up and who bought out the ISAs, right? And then even our Indian market, the institute, right, the market for the members of the chartered accountants in India, that market underwent an reformation. So now when something that great was done on the international front, our institute also wanted to do something for the country, right? So although it took some time, but finally in September 1982, the institute set up the APC, Auditing Practice Committee. Over there you had the International Audit Practice Committee, now you have the Auditing Practice Committee for the country, right? What did these Auditing Practice Committee do, right? They brought out SAPs and GNs. GNs are guidance notes and SAPs are statements on standard auditing practices. So again, they came up with a statement. If you notice, even the statements that have come up in 1955, even they were named statements, right? So they have statements on standard auditing practices and the guidance note that came up, right? Then these SAPs continued to be prevalent in our country for quite some time, for somewhere around 20 years. It underwent some amendments although, but still these SAPs continued. Finally, in the year 2002, July 2002 specifically, this Auditing Practice Committee was laid down, or in fact I would say they were converted into the AASB. Now you all are familiar with this term. Yes, it is the Auditing and Assurance Standard Board, right? So that was prevalent in our country for long. What did they do is they changed the SAPs and guidance notes to AASs, that is Auditing and Assurance Standards. So a lot of people who know it, right, or who were there in their IPCC and were interested, you know that at that point of time we had the AAS prevalent. So badges few years back they used to study the AAS. Then we called it SA, Standards on Auditing, which is actually under the umbrella concept of engagement standards. Because you don't have just a standard of auditing, you have other standards as well, right? So AASB actually brought in 5 categories of engagement standards. So auditing standards on auditing is actually a part of engagement standards, because audit is not the only engagement that you indulge into being a chartered accountant, right? There are many chartered accountants who are compiling accounts for the companies. There are chartered accountants who review the financial statements of the companies before actual auditor does it. Yeah, there is a practice. Sometimes what the companies do is after they have prepared their financial statements, they go to a chartered accountant. They don't go to him for auditing purpose. They have their auditor already. They go to that person and what do they say? They say, okay, look, this is my financial statement, right? And I just want you to have a look at it. Whether or not it has been prepared according to the accounting standards, according to the Schedule 3, right? Whether or not my entire financial statement is up to date. And if there is something that we need to change, then please, before the auditor comes in, let us know and we can make that amendment. Or if there is some adjustment they are not able to do, they will inform that chartered accountant that we also need to incorporate these things into these financial statement that we are not able to. So please look out for ways of how do we incorporate it. So even that is the kind of services we provide. I'm not sure whether in your internship you have been with your partners and your seniors to such a practice, but they are prevalent in the market and prevalent on a large scale, right? It's a common practice. So basically what are the 5 categories? The 5 categories are: first, SAs, that is the standards on auditing, and they are basically focused on the audit of historical financial information. So when you get the audit, you have the balance sheet and P&L and cash flow statement, notes, everything prepared. Yeah, some of you might be thinking, no, we haven't seen them prepared. Basically, they are prepared. When you go, the management gives you a draft, right? That is the financial. I know that is not being frozen at the end. You don't sign on that financial statement, you amend them accordingly if there is something needed as per the accounting standards and as per the other things, right? They get changed over the period before you sign them, but whatever draft they give you the financial information, right? And those are the historical financial statement that they have given it to you, and on that historical financial statement you perform your audit, and that audit is performed based on the standards on auditing, right? Then the next is the SREs, which are the standards on the review engagements, right? As I told you the story of how they go to a chartered accountant and ask them to review their financial statement before the auditor sees it. So this standard actually covers the concept of how or what are they supposed to do, what are the auditors supposed to do. There are 2 standards in SRE, and that guides their auditors, right? Who are not the auditor actually, they are the chartered accountants providing review services. Then we have the SAE, and these SAEs basically are the standards on other assurance engagements. So these are other than the audit and review, right? And these are not specifically based on the historical financial statement. Now you must be thinking, now what is the other assurance service that we provide? The one assurance we provide is the auditing, right? But you may see an instance that a chartered accountant is also preparing project report for a company, right? So that project report, the guidance or the standard for that project report preparation falls under this category. That is not an auditing, neither is he doing the review. That is a different kind of an assurance service that the chartered accountant is giving, right? But when the chartered accountant signs on a project report for the management, right, for the company, they assure only the assumptions. That yes, the assumptions that they have taken as far as the accounting standards and the standards on auditing are concerned, they are up to date, they are appropriate. But we do not confirm the numbers or the facts that have been provided, because we are not experts for that, right? We cannot judge the numbers, whether they have calculated the numbers correctly. What we can do is, we can see that whether the assumptions that they have taken are correct, and that is the only place that we assure. When we sign a project report, we mean to assure that the project report is prepared based on the certain assumptions. These are the following assumptions and they are correct. You account for them, right? Then you have SRS, standards on related services. So why are they called related services? Is because they actually help the auditors with other services. That is why we call them related services, right? So what are these kind of services? As I told you, compilation of accounts, right? So what is given over here is engagements to apply agreed upon procedures and other related services engagements, such as compilation engagement. So actually what happens is, when an auditor goes on, or not the auditors, mind you, when the chartered accountant goes on to the company, if the company comes to them and they say, please compile our accounts, then the chartered accountant is not liable to see whether the facts that they are providing, right, the number that they are providing is correct, because he is not auditing it. He won't go for the vouching, verification and the other procedures to apply and check whether they are giving the right data. No, whatever data has been given from the management, he will prepare the financial statement on that data, and his basis of preparing the financial statement, the schedule followed, the accounting standards used, they will be appropriate. So if he is compiling a financial statement, he is not signing them, right? That is not an assurance that he is giving it's correct. He is just performing the compliance part. Okay, you give me the data, I'll compile it for you. He will not check whether the data is correct or not. So that will not help the auditor in that way. The auditor cannot say that, okay, Mr. X has already compiled this. So if Mr. X has compiled it, he is a very renowned chartered accountant, very knowledgeable person. He must have done everything correct. So my risk comes to a lower level. Let me do one thing, I'll just go briefly over it and I'll sign the report. That will be the biggest blunder. Because Mr. X, although he is very renowned, although he is very knowledgeable, he has no control over the data that the management has provided. Whatever data has come up, he has prepared the accounts based on the schedule and based on the accounting standards. So yes, you can assume that the accounting standards that have been followed have been appropriately followed. You can assume that the schedule 3 has been appropriately followed, but still you cannot depend on that auditor. You'll still have to check it, because if something goes wrong, he will not be liable. The auditor who is discharging his attest function on the audit report will be liable, right? And finally we have an SQC, umbrella standard for overall quality control. So this is a standard that would actually define the quality control for all the above 4 standards. May it be SA, may it be SRE, SAE, SRS, right? So in your examinations in the past, you have not been asked a lot of questions on SRE, SAE, SRS or SQC, but recently these have started to gain importance. You have been asked questions on that. 4400 series, 4401 and stuff, you have been asked questions on that. So recently they are gaining importance, so you cannot neglect them, right? So for us, apart from studying the standards on auditing, we'll have to complete these other standards as well, right? So that was all about the brief introduction that I wanted to give. I hope now there is a link with the subject, and in the next class we'll start with the detailed discussion. So until then, this is Abhinay Gupta signing off. Thank you.